fix that. Rushed it. Now we're recording. But yeah, guys, so feel free to use the hand raise emoji if you have a specific question. Otherwise, I'm going to go around the room and we'll see what comes up. What was last week's topic that you guys were diving into?
Analyzing deals.
Comping and stuff.
Yeah, comping.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. I know that comping, I think it was Dennis I may have met with. I know comping is really bad for people with analysis paralysis, right? Is one thing I've definitely noticed. The analytical mind. Oh, it was Doug. I think it was Doug. Doug is who I was chatting with. And I think, the analytical mind can really take, and me and Doug had a great conversation about comping. And he goes, well, Nick, this property is really hard to comp. I said, I get that. B, that's almost to your benefit, because if you're having a hard time comping, it means the homeowner can't comp it either, right? So that is one of the beauties of land as well. I say, when in doubt, I'd love to know everyone's opinion, Mason and Francisco. I say, when in doubt and feeling lazy. I had a client tell me the other day, he goes, you know what I do, Nick? If I don't feel like running, he goes, I offer them half of tax assessed value right off the bat. And if they're not offended, I might have a great lead on my hands, and I think that what that does, it doesn't mean we don't need to comp, right? But we find out more interest on the seller side, maybe before we go down that rabbit hole is one of the things. So I would just say, like, as a quick tip, if you're just trying to come up with an offer and you want to throw it out there and see that is, I'd go 30 to 50% of tax assessed value. Tax assessed value is almost way lower than retail value is anyways. And you might be able to just use that as like a little safeguard. Then if they're a little interested, I would then, let's get the comping calculator, talk about some of the tools Mason and Francisco brought up, and then start to deep dive for more truer numbers. But that would just be a little cliff notes on that for the people who maybe get analysis paralysis easily and get lost in the weeds with that. All right. Well, yeah, we'll get to rocking and rolling. Dennis. Okay, here we got a question here. What's the most important part to include when completing the seller's contract? I'll let Francisco take this one. Joe, what's the most important part to include when completing the seller's contract?
I would say it depends on your disposition strategy. But overall, general consensus, I would say the most important part is the terms. I would say whether you're using a standard state contract that is provided or used by your traditional realtors, or whether you put in a like a one pager or two pager universal contract or a contract that you've gotten from someone else, is one, make sure that you're able to put additional terms in there. If you're going to assign the deal, you want to make sure, obviously it's assignable and things of that nature. And closing costs, probably, depending on if your sales pitch to the seller is, hey, we cover all of the closing costs, we pay cash. If that's something that you're using as your sales pitch to close the deal, you want to make sure that's incorporated in there as well too. And I think Mason just dropped a contract on there too.
Awesome.
You want to chime in on this one too? I'm checking this one out too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's whatever you negotiate in the deals and modify it. Always, I send this out, but with any legal document that's legally binding, have your own attorney review it and double check to make sure that it's applicable to the laws of the state, especially with ever-changing laws. This is what I use. I used to use the blind offer, land offer letter template in deals, but this one's good. It's assignable. It's not sneaky language, but it's one little sentence that says it's assignable. But it also, in the seller acknowledgement, fully acknowledges what the intention is, saying that, hey, our plan is to potentially market it before we've bought it, and potentially resell it for profit immediately. I think that you're going to go a lot further in business being transparent with people. What I've encountered specifically in the land space and specifically in the more competitive markets where it feels like a lot of you guys are working, like I say Lehigh Acres, Florida. Everyone's in Lehigh Acres and Marion County, Florida, and a lot of these different hot Florida markets. They know what you're doing. And the more honest you are, the better time you're going to have negotiating with them. And they're for the most part not distressed. I very rarely get distressed sellers in the land business anymore, unless it's a very rural market or some weird inheritance issue. But the quick cash close marketing spiel doesn't work that well in land.
Yeah.
You have to buy land with cash. That's why my funding company exists, is to provide cash for land, land flippers.
Right.
So recognize the jargon that you're using will make or break you as a salesperson in this. The more scammy you come across, the less likely you are to close more deals.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And then a good way to consider scammy is like, what are you keeping under your cloak? Right. Would be like a good way. And that's why like I'm the same. I'm so communicative. One of our clients actually has his own TV show on A&E. And he sent over his showrunner, the guy who actually runs the show. And, I thought that it was really cool she's like, man, yeah, I got the bug. I'm ready to do this. And, it's very interesting, what comes out of these real estate deals and how many people start to get interested. One thing I would say to support what Mason and Francisco were saying is I would make sure that the terms of the contract accurately reflect what you spoke about. One, Mason's contract has language that has transparency involved. And two, make sure that what you clearly spoke about is easy to understand from the seller. We don't want to go out of our way to use confusing legal jargon, right? So one thing that they taught us in the restaurant industry was don't use back of house jargon with customers, right? So, when we're behind it, we have all kinds of nicknames for all of these things. Well, don't bring those nicknames to the average Joe. They're not in your industry, if you will. So I would just remember, like, anything that can confuse someone can lose rapport. Okay. And I think that's the important thing. So making sure you're ultra clear, making sure, and you know what else too? Maybe you create the contract for full transparency. Hey, I'm gonna write this contract. I'm doing the terms right now. Here's what we spoke about. Does that sound? I just want to make sure we get this right. Does this all sound? So like, think about another way to look at it. Think about how you could make them comfortable in this potentially uncomfortable situation. So one thing may be to reach out to them, reconfirm the terms, tell them that's why you're going to put this in the contract just the way you just said it. And then the other part is that we've spoken about a couple times is I have one client who sends over a video recording of him doing a screen share of the contract. And I think that things like that seem extremely authentic to our sellers. Oh, wow, this guy's doing his best to make sure I know everything, right? So there's certain little care points that you can also add on top too to really improve that. And Mason, I know who you are. I know some other people probably do too, but I'd love if you would just give a little intro, who you are, what your experience is, and the business that you own that can help everyone here also close more deals. If you want to just get into that real quick before we get going.
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. So Mason Mcdonald, been full-time in the real estate investing space for only 2.5 years now. Started my career in hospital administration, worked my way up to be chief executive officer of a hospital out here in Colorado Springs, which is where I currently live. Realized I could make a lot more money and spend a lot less time investing in real estate. So came across land flipping, took a course. I took the Land Sharks course with Brent Bowers, who's a good friend and business partner now. Spent $5,000, thought it was the dumbest thing ever. Sent out my first round of mailers and made 115 grand on my first flip and quit my job. So started off just like a lot of the people in this room that are in the land space. I'm sure some of you guys are in the house space, but I always bought and closed the land myself. Never did any assignment deals. I've only done a handful of assignment deals so far, but I kept running into the same issue of I'd buy land, I'd sell it, I'd make a bunch of money, I'd spend that money on marketing material, I'd go buy a bunch more land. And then I kept running out of cash, and I recognized everyone else was running out of cash. So myself and a friend turned business partner, Dan Habercost, started a company called Ground Up Partners, which has now become Ground Up Fund. We're a accredited investor fund and raising investor capital to continue to provide capital to land flippers. We partner on deals. So we are not a passive partner. We are an active capital partner. We're not a financing company or a lender. We come in, provide all the capital for the deal, and then do a profit split. Typically, we do a 50-50 profit split for our first deal, through the fund model. That's why we're doing it. We're trying to get our investor capital down as much as we can to give up more and more of the deals. Our main criteria with those deals is a minimum sale price of $20,000 per lot or per child parcel in the event of a minor subdivision, with us receiving a guaranteed 20% cash on cash return. We do hold title. You have no risk in the deal. So say the deal sells at a loss. It's not like you have to pay us back or anything like that. Say it sells at 19% total cash on cash return. It's not like, you owe us anything. We do manage the deal once you assign it to us. So we communicate with the realtor. We handle all the transaction coordination and everything like that. Also have a podcast called The Big Picture Blueprint. We have a lot of land investors and everyone from, we had Ryan Pineda's branding and marketing coordinator on it. For yesterday's episode, we have some guy named Nick, how to build the best lead gen company in real estate, coming out next Monday for a new episode. So
who's that guy?
Yeah, who is that guy? He's just some tool. But yeah, that's the high level elevator pitch.
Cool.
So my main business is land flipping. This funding company I imagine will take over my life, and then do a little bit in the education space, mostly for the purpose of trying to teach people how to bring us good deals. We've had close to 80 deals submitted to us in the last 6 months, and about 60 of them are shitty deals of people that just don't quite know what they're doing. So my goal is to help people just like Nicholas and what he's doing with this community right here, help you guys learn how to identify and actually do good deals, and then be your capital partner on it. So, and
Yeah,
I'll put all my stuff in the chat right now.
Yeah, and that sounds, that's even more than I thought. I didn't know you were a CEO of a hospital. That's really cool. Explains a lot why your systems are so down pat in your businesses. And then, the other part, sounds like we need to get your deal submission form even on our website in a sense, because that sounds like you're a perfect partner for a lot of my clients, right? And if you guys picked up on what he was saying, if they approve the deal and they take it on, no matter what happens, they're kind of responsible for it. So like I said, even if it falls short, they said, no, we originally said this was good. So even if things turn out differently, there's no issues. And it sounds like you kind of get, I don't want to call it mentorship, but you get a lighthouse, right? Where this person is essentially has equity stake in your deal. It's not just, as a CEO myself, I can relate. Sometimes it can be really frustrating being the only one pushing forward, right? That's how it feels sometimes in our business. So something like this, you might be able to work with Mason and be like, okay, our guys got it. We know that's going to be, we can now focus on more deals, on getting more deals, because he's focusing on this one getting close. So I really see some cool strategic partnerships there. Mason is a very big client of ours. He's received a ton of, that's how we met. He hired us. And he made a comment to one of my posts, says, I already got 200 leads and we just got started. And that's kind of how we got here. He said, hey, I have this great thing. I made money from your service. Now I want to help your students make money. So that's kind of how Mason got here, to kind of jump in and help out on these random sessions, just so everyone knows too. Started off as a client first, became a friend, and now I want him to help you guys close more deals.
Nick, could I ask a quick question
Yeah.
while you're right there on that? It's Kathy in Georgia. Is the main advantage, Mason, then to you, partnering and offering your services to us to be able to do more deals? Cause I'm in that place where I'm only flipping and I'm doing the A to B close. So I'm limited because I can't quote purchase because of the cash flow. Is that fair to say that that's one of the
Yeah.
big advantages?
Yeah, I think you know, to look at it from both ends, where the advantage to you is if you don't have the capital to close a deal, we can provide it. Obviously, your margins are not going to be as good if you had the capital to close it yourself, or you had your own private investor that gave you, you know, rates similar to what we give our passive investors. And we're very transparent with that. It's debt arbitrage. We go raise money at X and deploy it at Y. That's what a bank does. So if you don't have the capital to close it, it gives you the ability to close it. You also lose risk, which is nice. You don't have any risk on the table anymore. And then on the other side of it, so while your margins might not be as good as if you were to close it yourself with your own capital or private money that was at a low dollar rate, what I have seen consistently is you're going to make more money than you would assigning a deal. And that's what a lot of our clients have come from. They've been wholesalers and they've been taking these $2,000 or $5,000 assignment deals. And then whenever there's 40K of margins in the deal, if you put it on the market. And that's what a lot of the other land funding companies are doing is they're saying, hey, you know, they offer the same profit split percentages, anywhere from 30 to 70% that they take home themselves. But at the end of the day, like they don't close a deal. And that's the story I tell all the time of this deal that we funded in Alabama. Total purchase price with all closing costs was $41,300. Other land funding company offered the investor $2,500 on an assignment fee. And we put it on the market at 85K and sold it instantly in 3 days. And so they ended up making 20 grand or whatever it was, instead of 2,500 with no capital out of pocket. So that's what
Your team does the marketing then?
we partner with realtors.
Dispositioning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
with local realtors to do the marketing and everything like that. We
So
always have found that we get the
50% of something that I didn't have, even though it's a 50-50 split, it's potentially a deal that I didn't have before.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the idea of, you know, paying the consultant 100 grand to increase your EBITDA by $1 million. Like it's
Sure.
unrealized potential. And then obviously the reason we do it is we make money, but it's an extension of our own businesses. So
Yeah.
Dan and I have done, between the two of us, 500 land flips in the past 3 years. And, you know, it's just us being able to extend our own businesses. It's creating an army of acquisition partners, basically. And so we see it as a huge opportunity of introducing the private equity space into the buildable land space.
And, you know, another touch on that is that we get to stay in our genius, right? People reach out to me all the time and they go, Nick, why don't you invest in real estate, man? You got this badass company. Because that's not my genius. My genius is lead generation and business operations, right? It's not necessarily flipping deals, finding unique issues and solving them. So let's say it's actually really cool. We probably got a new product on the horizon here, Mason, but you use me to get the leads for $30 to $50 per lead. You get it under contract and then you pass it off to Mason, then you go right back to more leads, right? So when you think about your scalability, and the other thing that Mason didn't touch on is, and this isn't the biggest deal, but a lot of people do have like an internal integrity meter. Well, Nick, I said I was going to buy the property, but I'm not really buying it. I'm assigning it. So am I really in integrity saying that? When you work with someone like Mason, you are buying the property. Right. So I just want to share with you guys that it can also, a lot of people, they have that confidence issue. Well, I'm not really drinking my own Kool-Aid yet because I told them I wanted to buy it. But with a strategy like this, you can also speak with confidence. I've got a great partner. This is all he does is he handles deals exactly like you could almost leverage that expertise. So I'm even seeing the bigger picture here as well. And then you guys stay in the middle. I got the ugly lead part, the cold callers, the list, the skip tracing, and then we send hot leads. You call those leads and send the offers. Once they accept, you then kick it off to Mason. If he either, I'm sure in the deal submission form, he didn't say this, but I'm sure if the deal's close, he's going to tell you if it's close. If it's way off, it's way off. But I'm sure if we're like 5K away, he could be like, hey, if you actually get them to drop 5K, we got a winner here and I can take on this deal. So you could almost maybe utilize these tools together and you guys stay in your genius, which might be calling the hot lead, sending out the contract kind of thing. Which that's another piece because, you know, I have 35 employees and it's stressful. It's stressful for a lot of, it's stressful to leave your genius. You know, like I brought on Francisco like 3 months ago. And one thing I've learned from him being here is my genius is customer interactions. You know, I want to be the man, but with all the systems and processes and marketing and Facebook and all this other stuff, there's less and less I can honestly take on as time goes on. I don't like to admit that, right? I mean, who wants to admit that they can take on less and less? But if I stay where I'm at in my zone of genius and I get people around me that their zone of genius is, we all of a sudden we've got a jet plane and we can really take off. And that's been a big lesson for me recently is right people in the right seats on the bus. And in a service like that you don't have to pay upfront costs for and stuff like that, I think is a really anything that doesn't cost any money and only has a payout option. I'm all in for. So that's super cool. But awesome, guys. So thank you, Mason, very much for that. And yeah, we'll get to rocking and rolling. In the top left, I currently have Dennis. I know Dennis is always on camera. If you guys don't have a question, no big deal. If you do have a question, feel free to hit me with it. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Dennis.
Hey, Mason, this question is for you. How long is it taking for you to get the ball rolling with your leads from these cold calls you're getting? On average.
What do you mean by that? Like how long
Well,
from whenever
from the time you get the lead, how long is it taking you to convert them to close on average? Cold call lead.
Yeah,
from us,
that's
from us, you're saying,
yeah.
not from you submitting a deal to
Right.
his business, but from lead mining.
yeah,
From lead
conversion of
receipt.
lead to deal. It
Yeah.
depends. It depends on the nature of the complexity of the deal. I mean, median is usually going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks probably to get the ball really rolling. But I mean, it takes sometimes months to convert deals. That's the power of follow-up, where I think what Lead Mining Pros does really, really well is, you know, I submit it, you know, I pull my own list just because I have all the systems in place to target the exact property owners. I'll get those leads within a week or two, depending on how we structure the campaign. And then well, not myself, I've got a full-time acquisition manager, salary plus commission, then 3 part-time ones. We get back to them as quickly as we can. And I hate to say it, it really depends on the deal. Of like some of these are 600K profit deals that are going to take months to structure appropriately. I hate giving that attorney-esque answer, but if you follow up with them quickly and there's meat on the bones with the more motivated or more distressed sellers, like sometimes it can take 2 or 3 days to get it under contract. Sometimes it's going to take 6 months of follow-up, and it goes into some of the stuff that Nicholas said of like, you know, send them a video of like walking them through the contract or send them frequently asked questions. I put my title reps or title attorneys contact information in those first correspondences of, hey, if you don't, you know, it's the age of getting scammed right now. And so I can say in Florida, go to, you know, Christina Rubio, my title attorney down there, and they're going to, you know, advocate for me and say, oh, Mason does close and that sort of thing. So it depends. I never expect to get paid on any campaign for at least 6 months, is how I look at it.
And are you CRM dependent for follow-up, or are you just doing it manually?
CRM dependent for sure. I use Pebble as my CRM, which I'll drop a link in there. If you guys don't use Pebble, it's really great. It's for land investors, by land investors. I actually was just on Jesse's podcast, I think this past week, this most recent episode, but they do a good job. They're constantly iterating. You can text and call and mail directly from there. It's just like any other Jira board in terms of, stages and pipelines and that kind of thing, but really easy to use and set up. And, with CRMs, it's all in the hygiene of, are you keeping it clean? Which I don't do a great job at. But my wife does better at, going back. But I mean, right now we've got, between all the boards, 200 leads, give or take, that we're actively, actually probably more than that, 300-ish leads that we're actively managing right now.
Wow.
And some of them are going to be in long-term follow-up. And like an example of that is we got a lead spring of last year of 2023 and just stayed in constant contact with the guy, checked in every month, finally agreed to sell it in January for 40, all in, it was like 46.4, I think. And then we sold it for 115 grand, like a week later. So like one call a month made me,
Right.
whatever that was after paying out everyone, 60, 70 grand. So long-term follow-up, I think, is the most important thing, regardless of speed to lead or how long the conversion cycle takes.
And I think something that's very important there is I had this great talk yesterday with a client, and I think we often tell ourselves that difficult leads aren't worth our time. And I think that the reality is difficult leads are being left in the dust by your competition. If I came across a difficult lead, someone who's hard to get in touch with, or someone, they said yes, but I can't get them back, that's a great sign. What that means is where your competitors pursued them, they've quit where you've lasted the test of time. So one thing Mason is alluding to is your persistence is going to go a lot further because other people are dropping off. Oh, he was, he had kind of an attitude on the phone. I'm not going to call him back. Oh, I think he's having a bad day. He was a little rude to me. I'm not going to, he didn't answer my first call back. There's no way I'm going to call him again. Right. And those things get in our head. And the reality is the harder they are to nail down, often the better of a lead it is. And the reason why is because they're busy too. I brought up just yesterday, I got a lot going on. I got a turf quote in the backyard. I'm actually trying to put a second story on my house. I'm looking at getting my driveway redone. If these guys don't call me and say, Nick, do you want to do it or not? Well, yeah, I've got 15 other projects I got going on. I can't always remember to call them. And this follow-up is extremely important for busy people, whether they're busy or distressed. It is hard to get them on the phone. So the persistence really helps overcome that as well. Next up, I got Joy here. Lisa, I do see your hands raised. Is this pertaining about what we're talking to here? Okay, great. Go for it.
So with regard to the difficulty, and you hit on it, but what would you say makes it, and I have not done any land, so my sphere has been in housing. What makes it so difficult to convert that? Is it the money? Is it the emotional tie to the property? I mean, what is it?
I think that, it's, in short, I'll let the other pros here answer here in a second, but in short, it is how quickly you can relate to that person, right? How quickly you can get them to see what you're seeing. I don't do business with people that I feel are predatory, right? I don't do business so it's like coming in authentically, knowing that you're a real person, at least getting in, hey, I'm not ready right now. The best thing you could ever hear is, I'm not ready right now, but you've been amazing. When I am ready, you're the one. Right. And I think it's like teeing up that relationship. I used to say, you should be shooting for them to love you, because worst case, they're going to like you. Right. And you need them to like you to do a deal. I joke and I say, I wouldn't sell anything I had for sale. If someone I didn't like wanted to buy it, it's not for sale anymore. Okay. So I think the first step is rapport and getting on common ground. And then the next step would probably potentially be price or conditions or you getting to the root of it. Land is generally very easy. With houses, let's say grandma or a family member lives there, we got to talk about where she's moving to, right? We got to talk about the condition of that. With land, it's really very transactional, which works out to your benefit. There's not a lot of things we can lose the deal on. Which is why I think them loving you is even more important, because there's less negotiating terms here. You know, if a tree falls on the roof, you could be like, look, buddy, I'm not paying full retail. There's a tree on the roof, right? With land, there's nothing but trees. So, you know, we don't really have the same negotiating power. So I would say rapport and being relatable to the seller, connecting them. And I'll just share one last thing before I let Mason or Francisco answer. And that is, in the restaurant industry, they taught us that there's three kinds of people in this world. Okay. There's fast, there's friendly, and there's exact. Okay. Those are the three kinds of people. If you show up really friendly with the fast person, that doesn't work. They're in a rush, right? If you show up really exact with the friendly person, they don't care. That's not their vibe. So one thing I would suggest is find the kind of, if you can tell they're talking about decimal points, that's an exact person. If they're talking to you for 20 minutes about their kids and their family, that's a friendly person, right? If they're trying to get an offer out of you and get off the freaking phone, that's a fast person, right? So I think the first step is respecting them where they are would just be a little thing to touch on. And that's only because land, I think, is more relationship based. Like I said, because we don't have the negotiating power, and they might not be, like Mason brought up the word distress. Anyone that owns land is likely not in a financial hardship, right? If they did, the land would already be for sale, right? So instead, we're kind of removing a nuisance, something there. So like, for example, I've got a Winnebago, okay, that I'm trying to sell. By the way, if anyone wants a
Good luck with
Winnebago,
that. No.
$15,000. If
Do
anyone
they
wants
even
it,
manufacture those anymore?
you know, I'm not sure. I am not sure, but I am so done with this damn thing. And it's actually worth $55,000. I'm about to just drop the price to 10,000. At this point, I just never want to say the fucking word Winnebago again for the rest of my life, right? At this point. And that's where, in a sense, that's kind of what we want out of some of the land people. We're not going to find distress like, oh, I can't pay my mortgage until I sell this land. We're not going to find that as much as someone who's like, I've been paying to mow this thing for 10 years. I've been paying taxes on it for 20 years. I'm done with this. I was going to build my dream house. I'm not doing that anymore. So we're almost like looking for a different, that was a really long answer. But Francisco, Mason, if you guys want to chime in on what else. Oh, Brad asked that I repeat the people type: fast, friendly, and exact. Those are the three types of people. When we can mirror their energy, and you know what else I'd like to do with them too? Let them know you see who they are. Hey, I can tell you're a fast person. I am going to respect that as much as possible. When you need something from me, I'm gonna jump. Okay. Hey, I can tell you're super friendly. You know, if you ever want to call and talk about anything, give me a shout. Always compliment who you see they are so they know that you get them too. So I would just throw that in there. But yeah, Mason Francisco, her question was, what can make a land deal difficult? If I was to paraphrase her question, what makes it difficult to close?
There could be a whole plethora of things that make it difficult. The person, family members, properties that have title issues, probate can definitely be difficult. There's many different factors that can make a deal difficult. I'll probably say if I had to choose maybe the hardest one, my opinion, probate, depending on their situation. Because probate, you have multiple people involved in a deal. You have to coordinate and get everyone on the same page. If there's multiple people that have to get on the same page, that's already another mountain to climb. I'm currently dealing with the probate deal right now, where luckily the brother-in-law and the seller's husband, they get along. But you know, if let's just say they didn't get along, now I have to figure out how to get two different people that live in two totally, completely different states to both sign off on selling a property, right? So yeah, that there's many different instances and scenarios that can make deals difficult.
And a lot of those are relative to whether it's land or houses, what Francisco brought up as well. So it's
Yeah.
like, so I think that, whether it's either or in his answer, as you probably dealt with some of those things even in your house experience as well, the people side and then the physical side. What about you, Mason? Anything land related that you've seen be a roadblock?
Yeah, I mean, on the technical side, exactly what Francisco said of dealing with complex title issues or probate or, I mean, breaks in the chain of title. We're dealing with one in South Carolina right now where I think it's a funny and useful story to hear, where the only reason she called us back is because my land flipping company name is RM Golden. My name's Mason. My wife's name is Rachel, and we have two golden retrievers. Like that's it. But she had some boss in the 50s named Mr. Golden. She was like that. She, for whatever reason, felt some connection to us. And so she owns two parcels. There was a break in the chain of title in 1982. Went out of family, back into family. Her family owns a ton of land all around us. And what we're doing is we're resolving these title issues. It'll probably take a year to go through, and about $7,000, which she's actually paying for, which is kind of nice. That usually doesn't happen. But I mean, we have it under contract, I think, for $75,000 for those two lots, which they're worth about 300 after subdivision. And then add in her family's land that's surrounding and adjacent, it's going to be a 7-figure deal. Assume, and I don't count anything until, I've received the cash, but I think following up and developing a connection on the branding side is super important, which brings me to the point where the complexity of any deal is the soft skills and people aspect, which is what Nicholas hit on. And that is so much more important than the technical side of things. Land deals can only get so complicated. And I mean, whether it's heirship claims with 50 heirs of a property or something like that, depending on the state you're in, or complex title issues or whatever, it's about developing rapport with the seller and getting to know them. There is less emotion with sellers typically. And the scale of emotion is probably dependent on the amount of land that they own. There's plenty of developers I've bought, 2 to 10 properties from, where they're Nicholas with his Winnebago, and they're like, I'm tired of paying property taxes on it. I know how much they're worth, but I don't feel like dealing with a realtor and fielding offers of, fill out a listing agreement. You're going to be signing 20 or 30 things for one listing agreement. Imagine doing that on 150 parcels. It's going to take the rest of your life just signing stuff. So figuring out what, if any, of their pain points are. A lot of times it's you're dealing with older people, and what I have my acquisition managers lead with, and what I used to lead with, is what were your plans for your land? Not what are your plans for your land, it's what were your plans with your land. Because that reminds them of whatever their intention was, if they were going to build a retirement home in Florida or a mountain cabin in Colorado or whatever it might be. And then it's like, okay, well, so are you still planning on doing that? And then you have to have them future looking, and they're going to be like, well, my kids can inherit it and that kind of thing. And it's like, oh, that's great. That's going to be a great little nest egg for them. Have you set up your will and everything to make sure that they're not going to have to go through a complex probate issue? If you need an estate planning attorney, I can recommend one in the area, and really figure out the root of their problems and remind them how painful it is. I don't think it's, unethical or anything like that to make them realize of, like, if you've ever gone through an estate, it's a pain in the ass to deal with all this kind of stuff. Kids don't want to deal with their $30,000 parcel in Florida that they have to have it go through probate in the courts local to where it is. So if you can bring up their pain points and capitalize on them, you can be super effective in negotiations. And then on your side of things, it's just math. What's your minimum desired profit? Is it a number, or is it a percent return? And then subtract that from what the anticipated market sale price of it is, minus the closing costs on the sales side, minus the closing costs on the acquisition side. And that's the highest number that you can do.
And I think too is rapport fixes everything. So like lead mining is a perfect example. We make mistakes at lead mining. right? We may have made some mistakes on some of your guys' campaigns,
Yeah.
but the people love me so much that that one mistake doesn't affect the relationship. Now, 2 mistakes, 3 mistakes, 4 mistakes is done. But the better relationship you have with them, if you do miss a word on the contract or you do something and you have to go back to them, if they really like you, you got a freebie. And I would say that is one of the most important pieces to building, adding on to the rapport. So that way we don't have to be so perfect every second of the transaction. Hey, they love me. And that lead mining, I say the same thing. Like when we make a second mistake on a customer, I go, look, the first one, our reputation, it doesn't matter. But the second one, our reputation was eaten up. So like we need to minimize our mistakes because they don't love us that much. This is like what I tell my team whenever we're putting out fires. Like, I don't even want any mistakes. But the one, because our brand and our reputation, because they spoke to me for an hour on the phone, that kind of is absorbed. Hey, Nick, I know you're legit. I know you're great. Let's just get it figured out. Right. But when that happens second or third time, so you can use that same knowledge to your benefit. You be super friendly up front. So when something does get jacked up, which it may inevitably will, there's really no rapport loss. You had rapport in the bank, would be a cool way to word that. But awesome. I love that. I love that. And thank you, Gene. I love you too. I appreciate all your support on my Facebook posts and my Facebook ads. Gene is always there. I appreciate you so much for that. So thank you so much.
Yep.
It means a lot to me. I really do. Next we'll hit up Joy. She's been patiently waiting for us. Joy, go ahead and hit us with your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Nick. And I do want to say thank you for your genuine interest in making sure that we win by putting this platform together. My question is more towards land because that's where I'm at right now. And I wanted to ask Mason, because you kind of hit on this about mistakes. And I think that a lot can be learned from just different instances and different stories that you've or clients you've dealt with. So my question is, can you share an instance where you got it wrong, Mason, and it kind of worked out in your favor, and then an instance where you got it wrong and it didn't? And what was it that you missed? Thanks.
Yeah. So I think getting it wrong and it working out in my favor was definitely my first deal that I did. Acquired all 3 parcels that I bought. It was in Pagosa Springs. 2 of them didn't have access. None of them had utilities. I knew nothing about anything. I'd saved up $60K to invest and spent almost all of that money on that first deal, or 43 or 44K or whatever it was all in. I thought it was worth maybe 60 grand. And because I didn't know how to comp, I didn't know anything about anything at all. And whenever I was actually on vacation with my wife, debating whether or not I would quit my job. We were in St. Croix. I was looking on my iPad at the beach at, recent sales just on the assessor's website rather than Zillow because it was an off-market transaction. Saw an adjacent parcel that didn't have access to those 3 that I just bought. It sold for 150 grand for that one lot. So I was like, oh, I thought maybe all 3 were going to be worth 60 grand. I was going to make like 15 grand. I was stoked. And so that worked out in my favor because hindsight, I would have, done a lot of things differently in that one. One that hasn't worked out in my favor, and we'll see. I haven't had to pay the piper yet. But part of the way and reason I've set up Ground Up to fund people's deals in this capacity without providing risk is because of the risk that I've taken on in deals. I've given up a majority of the profit of plenty of deals that I've done in order to get it done. And so I think that this current deal that I'm working on and that keeps me up at night, we bought it for 350 grand last, I want to say April or May. The realtor who I'd worked with on a handful of deals, who had done a good job, but hadn't worked this particular market, comped it at 770,000, put it on the market at like, I don't know, 720 to hope to get some traction. And here we are in June of 2024. It is listed at 489,000 or 480,000. And if it doesn't sell by August, mid-August or August 26th of 2024, I have to pay my lender back I want to say like 410K. So it sucks. I do have the capital available to pay them back. And hopefully the property sells before then. I'm at the point where I'd rather take, 20 or 50 grand loss than have to deploy that much of my own capital into a deal. But yeah, and we'll see. Who knows? My realtor is doing my new realtor that I fired my previous one. She's doing an open house. I just paid $12,000 in property taxes on this one. So it happens, and that's business. And between this deal and another deal, these might be the first 2 land deals I've lost money on. And those are the ones I remember, not the 100 other ones that I've made a ton of money on. So the lesson learned on this particular one is I don't focus on luxury markets where there's a very limited buyer pool. The homes in the area are selling for $3 to $5 million for 4,000 square foot homes. The land, it is comped correctly. There's land selling for 450 to 600,000 for each parcel, the 2 to 5 acres. But there's only about 3 sales per year for land in this community. It's Franktown, Colorado. Address is 7572 Kelty Trail. Like, you can look it up. Listing looks good. It's a quality listing in a great neighborhood in a beautiful area. But yeah, this is one that I look forward to the Band-Aid getting ripped off and just like dealing with it and saying fucking never again, so I can sleep at night. But yeah, it happens in business, and talking to my friends that are multiple, million, 100 millionaires, and they're like, the worst thing that happens in this instance, dude, is either you sell it at a slight loss, or you pay off your investor and then you own an asset that's worth $500,000 that you could build a home on and JV with a home builder and sell the home and make 200 or 300 grand. And they're like, get the fuck over yourself, dude. It's not that big of a deal. And I'm not trying to say that in any other way. I'm not trying to like brag about it and say, oh, 400K is nothing to me. 400K is a significant amount of money to me. I look forward to the day when it's not, but it's a ton of money. So yeah, I win, I lose just like everybody else. And now I know what deals to say to people. Don't touch that one. So that's my answer, Joy.
And then one of the things
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question, Joy. If I was to guess, sounds like you're in human resources. Tell me of an instance where this happened. That was very cleverly put together, too. And you just made a point about having the property. Oh, the lessons learned. So one thing I tell my team is, if we make a mistake only once, we're winning. Okay. And I think that's really important to do. Like, we're busy. We have like 250 orders a month. Those orders have like 38 steps to them. I really can't tell my team to not make mistakes. Even a 1% mistake rate is 1 mistake every 2 orders. If you do the math, 1% is 1 in 100, right? So it's like, so all these things happen. And my motto with my team is, if that's the last time we ever make that mistake, we won. Right. And I like that. I hate beating myself up. I'm really good at beating myself up. So I try not to do it anymore. And I come up with all these sayings that make me feel better. Another thing I say, just while we're on mistakes, I've got a lot of them, is when I was younger, I learned everything the hard way. Everything. I'd make a small mistake, it'd get bigger, it'd get bigger, it'd get bigger, and I'm trying to come up with an example. But I wouldn't learn my lesson early enough. And then when we don't learn it early, the mistake gets bigger. And now we have to learn it the hard way. And the hard way is way too painful. I remember in my 20s, I committed to learning things the easy way. I was done with the hard way. I don't want shit blowing up in my face anymore just for me to realize I need to change. This is too painful, right? And so that's a motto I have: learn it the easy way. And so one thing I would say is, whenever something's coming your way, try to catch it earlier. Try to have more discernment faster. It's almost like a toxic relationship, right? Whether it's an employee or a loved one. hey, you know what? We're not headed in the right direction, but I don't really want to break off of this. And then before you know it, the relationship blows up in your face, right? Well, if we actually would have either communicated better early on or just ended things a little bit earlier, we could have saved ourselves that entire headache. So I would just say be on the lookout for the easy lessons. Don't let everything blow up in your face necessarily, because that's something I've been working on. The downside to that is you can start to become too cautious sometimes, because you're so busy trying not to learn things the hard way, and then you can become too risk adverse. But it's still a good motto when it comes to minimizing mistakes as well. So Mason, if that's the last time you ever made that, then I think you're in a great place, and the lessons learned. I mean, like, imagine if you made this mistake in 5 years on a $2 million deal, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah.
and again, I'm kind of an optimist. So it's like, I think, how much money did I save by learning early?
Mhm. Oh yeah. When I saw it in a movie, and I've also heard it, in a lot of high level business, especially in the private equity, family office, venture capital world, where you're not going to get fired for losing money. You're going to get fired for wrecking a reputation. So I could theoretically not pay my investor back. Now, that being said, I personally guaranteed this note, which I never do anymore, so they could take my house and take the money anyways and be a big long lawsuit. But they're going to get their guaranteed return, and it's going to be painful regardless of whatever happens, because I'm not going to ruin my reputation over a one bad deal whenever I've got 100 other good ones that can pay for it. And I think that right there is one of the most important things about it. Is you're going to make mistakes, you're going to lose money in business. It's taken a decent amount of time for me to get there, but it'll be worth it. And I'm sure I will appreciate this lesson in 10 years. I don't appreciate it right now, but in 10 years, I'm sure I will.
Yeah, no doubt. And Joy, I'll actually answer the question as it pertains to houses a little bit. I bought a 4-unit in Vermont. Okay. And it was like a good deal, and it didn't make, like, why is this guy selling a $4,000 a month cash flowing property? And I was like, man, this is crazy. Oh, what a great deal. Well, I bought it. I own it. I'm selling it, in case anyone's wondering. But I bought it, and it's really been a nightmare. There's only 400 people, and there's like 900 people in the whole city. I made jokes last time. I'm sure half of them are on meth. Okay. And four of those people on meth definitely live in my 4-unit that I have available as well. And we have to remember that people aren't selling things that are going extremely well. I think at a discount. Let me put that. People aren't distressed in selling things like this. The guy who owned it before me sold it to me at a discount, but he was so distressed, he didn't even run this property right. Right. So after we bought it, we found out he didn't pay the water bill for the last 6 months. He didn't pay the fire department for the 3 months before that. He hasn't paid property taxes. So all these things start coming up. The tenants are all taking advantage of us. All this crazy stuff starts happening. So it's funny. I just talked about not learning things the hard way. And then I share a lesson how I recently learned something the hard way. But and it's not that any of these things are an issue, but I didn't expect them, would be a great way to put it, right? They were unexpected. And I probably could have done better by expecting more problems to come rather than, oh my God, I got this Hail Mary, amazing deal. What was going on? No, of course there's going to be issues. And the reality is, and I teach this to my team too, we need to be greater. We need to be so good that even when problems come our way, that our systems and processes can overcome those problems. So for example, I bought the property. I thought everything was going to be great. So I didn't call any of the tenants. Well, maybe if I would have called every tenant and introduced myself and said, hey, I want to take care of the place. I want to make sure you're happy. I want to make sure you're cared for. And I'm right here. Call me if you need anything. There's things I could have done. Yeah, they're problematic. Yeah, they're probably on drugs. Yeah, they're probably stealing. That's irrelevant. What is relevant is what I could have done to expect. I should have expected things to be a little rockier. If I would have done that, I would have come in prepared with armor on, and that armor could have protected me from maybe where I'm at today, which isn't in a bad place. I think the property's increased $200,000 in value. It hasn't cash flowed for shit for the last 2 years I've owned it. But you know what? If I take it and I sell it and I make $200,000 on it, that will make up for all of the stress. But so, you know, when it talks about an issue is be careful what you're inheriting. No one's selling anything that's easy money. If it was easy money, they'd probably keep it. So I think maybe me changing the expectation and saying, where is the problem here and how can I make up for it, would have been a great attitude for me to have for this buy and hold property. All right, rock and roll, guys. I do got to run. I got a 3 o'clock call. I'm going to start changing that and not let people book till 3:20. That way we could run over a little bit late and we don't have a hard stop. But thank you everyone for joining in. You know, if anyone's got one other question, I'm sure we got time for it. If anybody wants to hit us real quick before we jet so no one's left hanging. All right. Looks like we answered some questions today. Mason, Francisco, and everyone who came in, thank you all so much for being here today.
I have a question. Quick
Hit
question,
it.
real quick.
Hit us,
Hey,
Jalita.
yes, is the replay available for this Zoom?
Absolutely. So all of these recordings are inside our course community, which I'm going to put a link in the chat here to that as well. But all of these will be in there and it should be there by tomorrow, the latest as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.